Loud. Great. Well, I want to welcome everyone today. Um, we welcome Rolly Kent as a first-time reader with our program. After attending Middlebury College, Rolly received an MFA from the University of Arizona. For many years, he taught poetry around the Southwest and on many tribal lands. He ran one of the first public library-based community writers projects, bringing poets and writers to prisons, nursing homes, women's shelters, and branch libraries in Tucson. His work has appeared in numerous magazines, including the American Poetry Review, The Atlantic, The Nation, and Poetry. He is the author of 2 books of poetry, The Wreck in Post Office Canyon and Spirit Hurry. He lives in Los Angeles. And I think, Rolly, we also have, phone ringing in a dark house, which has its own little scary moments in there. So welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let me just say a couple words. The theme this year is the power of poetry to illuminate the way, maybe encourage us to take action. And so maybe you could just start with some poems, then we'll talk after that.
Okay. I thought I would start with a memory poem. It's called "The Snow One Night," and it takes place sometime in the past. It's not exactly clear when. I don't think it doesn't need to be. The snow one night. Before I knew what woke me up, I walked across the dark to the bedroom window. From there, I could just make out someone slowly turning dervish-like in the heavy snow. "Who are you?" I said, fogging the glass with my breath. I drew another window on the window pane and looked through it. The man in the yard below looked straight back. It was my father in slippers and pajamas, his hair filled with snowflakes, his arms reaching towards something beyond our yard. What did he see that I could not? Whatever it was made him happy because he gave that two-fingered salute, which always meant he was feeling good. And so my father spun on, twirling in and out of evidence, until what was left of him and his dance was a phantom arm, a hand upturned, then just snow. And the snow went on falling harder and faster, past the shooting stars and planets a boy at a window once drew, across the invisible history of the night.
Very nice. Very nice.
I was thinking about your theme, John, and the spark part is interesting because it's very visible. You can see that, but you also need the darkness. The darkness needs to have its due.
Absolutely.
So here's another poem from my youth. I don't think it needs too much explanation. Lackawanna was an old railroad company in the town that I grew up in, New Jersey. As long as I could remember, there never was a train that ran through town, but somehow there was a little freight station that was always boarded up. Kindness. After Bobby Belmondo beat me up, I watched the night as it mixed with my blood, and I thought how black the final black will be when I expire from something more or less grievous than the swollen left eye and bloody nose Bobby gave me. It was a brief thought, because as I swooned between earth and heaven, Bobby pulled me upright. "You're scaring me, kid," he said, and he and Ralph, the heavyweight, walked me gently over to the boarded up Lackawanna freight station. where they proceeded to allay their own fear of death by giving me a boxing clinic on how, with my gangly reach, I should have jabbed and hit more. My defeat had made them kind. I even got a ride in the maroon Mercury coupe. "You're all right, kid," Bobby said. I got out, stood there, dazed by the mystery of loss. The glass-packed muffler rumbled down the hill, far into the night that went on endlessly and everywhere. Then I entered the house. My father, bless him, as if he'd waited 15 years to be of some genuine assistance to his son, looked at my face and saw his moment had come. He went down on one knee to reach into the back of the freezer where he had set aside a misshapen, crystallized steak no thicker than a slice of pumpernickel. My mother was aghast. "Who did this?" she demanded. My father only shrugged as he handed off the frosty steak, motioning to place it on my face, which got my mother insisting it would be better to treat my eye, now swollen completely shut, with a cut potato. You want to draw infection, not add to it with a piece of meat. God only knows where it came from. My father smiled wanly, knowing of the many things he could say, "Babe, it's frozen," was correct. He gestured again to hold the steak on my face. They kept arguing which was better, steak or potato. "Look," Dad said, "we won't always be here, so he needs to learn to take care of things himself." I went to my room and slept with the steak on my eye. I took care of things because we won't always be here. But seen from memory, it seems we always will.
So are there a lot of poems that involve your father?
There are. In the book, my family figures as, I think, sometimes quite weird, interesting characters. And I think over the course of the book, you get to know them. I certainly did. It's like you can grow up with somebody and not really ever know the secrets of who they actually are. My dad was a kind of a mysterious character to me. Let me read a different kind of poem. Somebody asked me to read this, so I'm reading it for them. You get on the highway and you go by such incredible speeds. Everything is so speeded up now. But you go by these big tandem trucks, especially here where I live in Los Angeles. There's a port nearby, and they're just truck after truck. And we were driving one night, and a truck went by carrying ducks, white ducks. White ducks headed towards the city on a tandem flatbed, 3 or 4 ducks in a cage. The cages crated in rows 5 across and 8 high, maybe 40 cages long. Say it's 1,600 ducks, hurtling along with their backs turned to the highway, and a few whose wings, as I do the math, blow up over their heads from the velocity of life, which they cannot stop, and the weird flapping disturbs some of their cage mates, who open an eye and shut it and then open it as they are struck by the errant wings of their friend, who is powerless to help himself. And then they look out, like old people on the deck of a ship bound for distant ports, a retirement cruise, or journey to the homeland, and they see only water. The days and nights are water. All the fish, the plankton and coral, the cruisers, the dinghies. At such speed, it's all water. The redbill, the black bill, the yellow, the orange bills, some on one foot, some crouched low, 1,600 ducks traveling from the country where they were born.
Quite a sight.
It was. Poor ducks. This is the title poem. It's, when you write, I think you have favorite poems. You have poems you like, poems that have perhaps a sentimental value. I really love dogs, and I had a dog named Phineas who was kind of the dog of a lifetime. He was actually a very arrogant character. He as my wife will tell you, he ran the house, and we willingly let him do so. So this is a poem in which, if you ever walked a dog, you have to walk them so that they can do their business. So it kind of starts off with that, and then something a bit unexpected happens. Phone ringing in a dark house. 10 steps farther down the road, we stop again, by a fence this time, when a phone inside a dark house rings. I turn and listen. Phineas swishes the dirt with his tail and pushes his sweet old face against my leg. He wants me to sing, like Wilson Pickett. What's my number? Then he'll sing 6, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and I'll go, that's my number. And he'll go 6, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. He's crazy about that chorus. Though on the high notes he struggles. No matter. We're still believers in each other and our own private lines. Just past the footbridge, he stops again, looks across the river above the cottonwoods, as if he sees Noah there, pronouncing the name of this moment. He turns around and says, remember to breathe. Of course, I reply. And, he adds, remember rock and roll and pasta bolognese and the phone nobody answered and cemetery. And, I interrupt, you're telling me this why? Just try to be where you're needed most. That's my motto. He stares into the sky. Life, he announces. Life is never through. Isn't it? I ask him. Doesn't it have to be? Maybe, he admits. But love what you know, I hear him say, over and over, until it sounds the same as love what you do not know.
Nice. I like that. Love what you do not know. That's a good line. I like that.
Thank you. I'll read. I had a very zany mother-in-law, who's a very unique person. I think it's all in the poem. It's called What Minnie Would Want. As she lay in hospice the few hours before she would die, I came to Minnie's bed and told her I loved her. We all loved her. And now she could go. But she was in a cocoon not even TV could penetrate, not even the score sheet of the Mets game, not even a game of poker. Her glasses were gone, and those eyes that had played 100,000 tiles of mahjong were closed for good. No more food, no more juice. I touched her forehead as you would a child's. She was peaceful and in no hurry. So I said those things you make up when the conversation that is life goes quiet, and there is really nothing more to say. For some reason, my last words to Minnie were amongst the stupidest I ever spoke. Don't come back, I said in her ear. But I didn't mean it the way it sounds. I meant be free. You had one hard life. Why have another? As soon as I said it, I knew Minnie would want to come back. That would be Minnie's way. What a dumb idea, she'd say. Of course life is hard. What did you think? Life is life. Even a baby knows this is where to be. Don't come back. I'm just going to forget you ever said that.
Oh boy. You got Minnie going there.
Yeah. Here's a new poem. I really love photography, and there are a couple of poems about photographers in the book. This is, I don't know if you all know the photographer Andre Kertész. He was a wonderful photographer. Actually, hold on. Here's that's a famous picture of his. If you can see there, he's taken the photo, the shadow. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a wonderful photographer. He really believed in staying an amateur. He was not a fan of professionalism, even though he had to be to make money. And he did quite a bit of commercial work. So let's see. Okay, I think everything's pretty much self-explanatory. It's called The Amateur, Andre Kertész. And there's a little epigram by Kertész who said, seeing is not enough. After his wife died, he didn't venture out into the city. Everything in the apartment spoke with her voice. And as time passed, from each of their windows high above the streets and parks, he could see even more of her. In the old world, she'd been called Erzsébet. In the new one, she took a new name, Elizabeth. Now that he saw her everywhere, no matter where he pointed his camera, what reached his lens was so sudden and new, the heaviness of earth weighed less than a butterfly. He had photographed the trenches of war, the peace that came after. His eye loved great cities, but the amateur's secret he believed in turned out to be neither seen, nor said, nor shown, only left, as Elizabeth left it. The world itself is a woman's shadow. All right.
So Rolly, let me ask you, because I think we had a little email correspondence about the Ravens. I hope you're going to share. Yeah.
John wrote me actually very funny, John. How did you put it? When the Ravens start to talk, I'll head
for your car. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of your poems, the Ravens were carrying on this conversation. I said, maybe it's time to pack it in and head for the car. Yeah. But I loved it. I loved the poem. And then they were in the distance and everything, and they were still talking, and yeah, it was great.
Well,
now every time I look, there's a lot of sometimes ravens around here. So now I'm going to have to start talking to them.
There you go. That's what I was.
Hey, remember that guy Rolly? When you no.
Okay, this is the first poem in the book. This really happened. Water. Around 5:30 in the morning, two ravens are prattling back and forth. I'd rather not listen. But when they start saying, water, 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 I get out of bed. What kind of ravens are these? I watch them sail across the pale dawn, then fly back and forth from the ponderosa pine on Briar Cliff to the eucalyptus on Tuxedo, then back and forth again, like reference librarians, checking one source against another, assessing the facts, nodding their heads until the air itself seems smitten with water. By nature, I'm a doubter. I lie back down, troubled. Is water the answer to everything? What is the answer to water? Is it the shore Or is water the answer to water? But then a third raven gets involved, and the three of them fly to some houses in the canyon where the sun has still not come, and the people there have questions that are the most human questions ever. And those birds answer them perfectly. They call back and forth, then the sound grows fainter. And yet, when I hear it repeated from far away, what they are saying seems so clear, even obvious.
I love that. I love that, Paul.
If you're a guy, and you're my age, chances are your sleep is increasingly interrupted.
Yeah.
So, and if you're not a guy, there's still a chance you've seen men's urinals. So this takes place in a men's room. My friend Andy and I were talking, and we headed into the men's room. So this is called Rhode Island. We're standing like men at their urinals should, keeping porcelain between us, when Andy announces his prostate's the size of Rhode Island. Before I can boast mine is Delaware, a youth slides into the empty stall, smug as the kid who ditched US geography. We won't quiz him. What states he doesn't know will still be there to greet him. Some days it will be Connecticut with its throbbing rivers. Some days big-bellied Ohio, or Wyoming with its yawning yellow plains. Young man, welcome. Stand with us, shoulder to shoulder, slacker and the slacked, our backs against the world. Join us, unafraid to gaze into the white and cherry-scented abyss, or upwards where the cracks in heaven are, and God leaked into the ceiling. For men never know where divinity may find them. Be ready, one hand free on your hip, but humble, mindful of zip, and when finished, think of Rhode Island, ceaselessly pounded by ocean, like the self, ever renewing, onward flowing towards Providence, its capital.
Oh boy. That was meditative. The whole thing is you don't find porcelain. Well, maybe you do. You don't find it very much anymore.
Oh, John, what state do you live in?
Yeah, I live in the state of Maine. Yeah, we don't have urinals. We just have outside. Only
Okay,
kidding.
then you're excused. Just trees, right? Pine
Yeah, it's
trees.
just tree. There's 17 million trees here. We're the most forested state in the nation. You
Really?
believe it? Yeah.
Well, there's 17 million urinals in California, and probably
There we
16,
go. There we
16
go.
million are in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Hey, Rolly, let's take we have a little process. We have a little kind of break around halfway through, and we let the audience just ask some questions or give some comments if that's okay with you.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's a little audience interaction. So I'm gonna just do a gallery. Anybody have a question or a comment? Kathy, I'm not going to pick on you right away, so you're good. Kathy's my go-to person if everyone is quiet. No, only kidding. She has a lot of good comments.
You have wonderful numbers today. So
Yeah, no, it's a big audience.
I would like to just say your acute observations help me to, as I sit here and look out my window, and I think about the way that you're making poetry out of everything you see. You're, I don't know, sometimes it feels a little bit like you're taking a distance. Other times it feels like you're actually entering into it on a level that we don't normally do. Both of them are present in your poetry, and I appreciate it. It helps me to open myself to seeing things more intricately.
Thanks. Thank you.
Anybody else? Eric? Yeah.
Hey, Raleigh, this is Eric.
Hi, Eric.
It's really great hearing these, and I've enjoyed reading your book. What I see in them and what really is inspiring to me about them is the way you've taken simple situations and either now, later in life, or at the time, probably it seemed to affect you in ways that was a much bigger than just the earth we live on type of learning experience, type of experience that seemed to stay with you. And I can see that. I see that when I have read some of the poems, most of the poems in here. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's not really like there's a, I mean, we all have a memory, and it's not exactly like there's a choice about some of this. But what's really interesting to me about memory is it's sort of a force, isn't it? I mean, it under the pressure of memory, whatever makes us remember certain things, it's almost as if there's a second chance, or a second life, or a third life, and particularly, memories that don't cease, particularly of people, or dogs, or places. Somebody told me that there are a lot of people in my book, and somebody told me that it's really as if the people are places on a map, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think of memory as a sentimental thing. I mean, I certainly have sentimental memories, like of my dog. But when I go through, when I don't stop there, and I think this is what Barbara was saying, when I don't stop simply at that surface, at that obvious place, there's more to be lived. Like that scene with the, where the dog is singing. They're in front of a fence, and of course I'm the ventriloquist, right? And it's a picket fence, so Wilson Pickett, but it's also a song I really like, Wilson Pickett, and of course that my dog must love it also. So we have a duet. That didn't really happen, but in another way, yes, it did. Yes, it certainly did happen. And in the poem, I think this is the magic of poetry. That stuff happens, and it's real. I mean, on one level, of course, dogs don't sing, but if you had a dog, oh yes, they do, and that dog could sing. He was very fussy, he's very fussy about what he liked, and was that him? Was that me? Was it? Who knows? And you don't really want to know too much, because that ruins I think the fun of the poem. But also for me, it still touches me. Let me, if there's not another, I mean, you can interrupt as much as you want. Let me just read one poem that has that quality for me. It's a hard poem for me to read, because it's about a very, very dear friend, but a very dear and another zany friend. I mean, most friends become zany at some point. It's called Pure Lloyd. Before the hurricane ended our vacation, Lloyd would get up early and walk far down the beach to his morning rendezvous with the miniature man, a stranger I never met, whose passion was the smallest, most beautiful seashells. By the time the rest of us got up, Lloyd would be at the sink, gently washing each shell. He liked to set them out on the table at breakfast, near his egg whites with Tabasco. and watch our reactions, adding simply, I met the miniature man. The minuscule shells, cowries, stars, tulips, wings, hearts, would pass from hand to hand, never very many, 5 or 10 a day. Shells we suppose were chosen by the miniature man, pale silver and pink, shades especially poignant in that morning light. As we turned each one over, we could see where a tiny animal had lived like a child facing the bedroom wall, or a genie who foretold in shades of silver and dark blue the biggest storm in a century. We fled just as the flood came and left behind Lloyd's box of shells. Who was the miniature man? I asked Lloyd years later when he was dying. Lloyd claimed he couldn't remember. Was he a small man from Ohio? That was Lloyd, to distract with a joke and never let on where he was getting his information. Towards the end, we were holding hands. Lloyd looked at them intertwined. Was this my idea of a date? Then he sank back into the pillow and said it was weird to no longer be thirsty. He was done with water. He'd left the glass by his bed. He wanted me to see that little detail, the unfinished glass of water, meaning, if I understand him right, neither the glass half empty nor half full, but the glass, the shell around this tender life, which so easily flows away. He meant, when your heart ceases to beat, the oceans don't stop, and neither does the ocean in your heart. Sounds incredible, doesn't it? But that's what Lloyd says as we walk along the water of the miniature man's mind. Me bareheaded, Lloyd in his zinc oxide and crumpled hat, the two of us bending at exactly the same moment to lift a tiny bivalve, the way the miniature man instructed, holding it just so, as you would a stranded seraphim whose pale blue wings are covered with sand. That was Lloyd. Lloyd and his secrets. Pure Lloyd, always showing me what to look for.
Very nice. Very special friendship. Rolly, where was that exactly? West
Florida.
Coast, East Coast?
I was in not Sanibel. What's that island? Captiva.
Oh,
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, and that did happen.
great.
This it's in terms of your theme, John. We're living through a time of, I think, tremendous darkness, and there's so much of it. We have to inevitably pay attention to it. So, what is it? What are the sparks? What are the sparks that light things up? I think there's lots of things that make life light up. People, for me, certainly do. So let me read this one. Histoire d'un amour is a famous French song. You hear full of accordions and okay. The places are places in France. I love France, and particularly Paris. It's sort of the exact opposite of Los Angeles. Somehow very intimate. 2 cherries. Before we knew if you would live, we took a trip to France. And in every cathedral town in Saône-et-Loire, et Côte d'Or, we lit candles. Don't tell a soul, you said, each time. Jewish girl with a Catholic heart. On Pont Marie, you fought back tears. The Parisian light, thick as lemon conserve in the plane trees. The accordions pumping Histoire d'un amour as the boats sailed the Seine. Maybe the last time, Paris. On Louis Philippe, we bought 2 blue checkered cups for luck. At the bottom of each, a pair of cherries. And you lived. It was not expected. Now I look out the window, holding my cup. I watch you walk the dog, dressed for work, your brown curls shining, the dog sniffing the New Year's jasmine. An angel might appear, lost in the wrong century. But I don't look for angels, just us. At the bottom of the cup, 2 cherries, not quite touching, and that little space between them that makes love possible.
Very nice, very intimate. Thank you. Very nice. So are you working on a new collection, or did this just get published?
That's just out from Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Very nice.
Let me read something a little lighter. I used to work when I lived in Tucson and worked for a long time at Tucson Public Library. So I do have a big place in my heart for libraries. I did a lot of work with children, and sometimes I would have to take dictation. And that method of working with very young kids, created this book, Southside, 21 Poems for Kids from Tucson's South Side. And let me read one little poem, and then another poem by children. This one is by Armando. So he's probably in his 50s now, old Armando is. But at the time, I like to ask really stupid questions. And he had a lemon with him. And I said, well, what's the secret of lemons? And this is what he said. What is the secret of lemons? Do not cut them open. Then they might be like squash inside. Then they might be brown and hard, like something from underground. Do not put them on anything except maybe saladitos. They are so sour and strange to hold like gold rocks late at night. It is dark and nothing can breathe inside a lemon. It is so hot and so sour because of all the secret lines of juice.
How old was he then?
He was 9, and I never thought of lemons having secret lines of juice. But when you cut one open, it's exactly what they have, is those lines of juice. And if you remember back this is in the 80s, there was a movie called Mommy Dearest. And this little girl was just, her name was Raquel. She was 8 at the time. She was just ragging on about her sister. So we went with it, and I said, well, okay, what would you turn your sister into if you had that kind of power? So the poem is called Sister Dearest. A toad. I would turn my sister into a horny toad. I'll take a big cheese and put it inside a pot, and my sister will eat it all and become a horny toad. Then I pick her up in my hand. I put her into a pot full of hot tar. I shake pepper in there, and she starts to sneeze. She sneezes and sneezes. Then slowly she sinks into the tar, and I giggle like this. And she sinks down. And she goes into the little hole at the bottom of the pot, and through the hole in the floor, into the big fire under the floor, and then spiders, and then bats, and then big gigantic flies eat her, and the flies go in her tummy. She's crying, help, 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 but she's inside the fly, and the fly comes up out of the hole, and I am waiting. I catch the fly and put him in the tar, and I do it all over again to the fly with my sister
There's true love.
in it. Yes, that's true love indeed.
And did they all write poetry when you had whatever these little events or episodes? Did they all write things, or was it optional?
Some kids could not write.
Yeah.
Very often they couldn't, or very often they wrote so poorly or slowly that it was just much easier to take dictation.
Yeah.
And I found that rather than, and I wasn't really teaching them anything, for sure, I never made that claim, but I could be the editor, I could be the pencil, and it was just remarkable what ordinary talk would contain. And that, that's had a big influence on me, probably as much as any single poet. The power of conversation, and particularly something that children have. I find it in myself. So let me read a few more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was pretty influenced by Native Americans. I did a lot of work with Hopi kids and with Apache kids and Yaqui kids. And at the end of my time working at the library, I met a woman whose husband was the chief of the Yaqui Indians. And the Yaquis have a reservation in Tucson, but they also have one down in Mexico, in Sonora, Mexico. Their religion is a very interesting blend of Catholicism and the old religion. So Heather was her name, Heather Valencia. And New Pascua is the name of there were two Pascua. Old Pascua was in the center of Old Town, Tucson. New Pascua was a new reservation town, and that's where her husband, they were divorced. That's where he lived. Could a man be a snake? Could a man be a snake is the name of the poem. Once, after she left New Pascua, Heather told me that her ex-husband, the chief of all the Yaquis, didn't need a phone to receive word of his people on the Rio Yaqui in Sonora. He simply watched the ants. She introduced me to him, at least in his human form, because, Heather said, Anselmo could shapeshift. The time I was cornered by a rattler on Heather's patio, she came out and screamed for Anselmo to leave. It was the Sábado de Gloria, the Saturday after Christ's crucifixion. Also the day when the walls between the living and the dead soften and yield to the same wishes that commanded Jesus to walk from the tomb. I went to Heather's. So did the huge rattlesnake, in full afternoon sun, hunting. Could a snake be a man? The sound of the Easter rattles that shook the square in New Pascua sent me up a ladder onto Heather's roof. What was in the snake's mind? If I believe her, was Anselmo warning her she could leave Yaqui, but it would never leave her alone. She'd always be torn between two places. What can you do with knowledge like that? Either ignore it or live as if a snake can be a man. Heather heard me holler and came to the door. There was the big snake blocking her way. But when she saw who it was, she hurled curse after curse at Anselmo. Heather went right up to the snake because they had been in love once, but now it was over. Who knows, Anselmo said to me before I met him as a snake. All kinds of change is possible in the Creator's mind. Nothing's ever finished, even you. Maybe you were one of us. He would ask his dead mother the next time they talked. She would know. He was sitting in the parlor of an ordinary house, twirling some ice in a glass. With outsiders, he didn't have to be 1,000% Yaqui. He could take part in the sister and brotherhood of light, visible at night in the stars, the silver ants of the Creator's mind, carrying back and forth the work of endless creation. All right, someone else read. My voice is getting tired.
Why don't we have a little some comments or questions for a few minutes because it's 1:17. Why don't we have some comments and questions? Anybody else want to chime in and save Rolly from talking?
Judy.
My favorite
Uh,
one, included. I really love how your poems and you go from exact description, like in Lloyd's and the seashells, like Heather's porch, the glass that Anselmo is drinking from, details that you see, and then the fantasy, which is not really fantasy, it's just another level of reality. And you said something about that boundary. And for me, the boundary between reality and fantasy is what makes the poem so alive, because you move back and forth very easily. And it makes them sound equally true. And it's a kind of vision that I see, and a gift for making reality into something more than that. You know, the ravens circling, I've seen that. The ravens talking, I haven't heard of that. Ducks in cages, I've seen that, but I haven't heard of them. You know, or imagine them from the inside out. And there's a kind of dynamism, and especially when read, Rolly, that makes it. I've read the poems in book form, but hearing you read of them, they're coming from that place in you, I think, that captures it all, the different levels of existence and experience. And they're pleasurable. They're pleasurable to hear because they stir something. It's like, what? Wait a minute, where were we? Your father in the snow, was he really out there? What about that arm then? Was this just a dream? I mean, these are questions you ask, and they're intriguing. I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say I did not pay this woman to say those things. It was just that
Oh,
was
yes.
wonderful. Just wonderful. Thank you, Judy. Should I read one more? Mr. Host, should I read one more or what?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, go ahead.
Shall I read one more? And end?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Valerie has her hand up.
Oh, wait, somebody's,
Valerie has her hand up.
Uh,
go ahead.
oh, Valerie, go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Yes, I wanted to comment also on your very first poem with your father and the dervish. And I immediately, the whole poem took me there. I immediately went into the whole, you gave me a gift today. Thank you. You gave me the vision. I believe it was completely real as well with the last woman that was commenting on it. I don't think it was any accident, but everything you said, I saw it all. I felt it all. It became very real and alive to me. And I love movements. And I've been watching some dervishes lately on YouTube, and I absolutely think they're most extravagantly gorgeous dance and sacred dances. And so thank you for that beautiful gift of aliveness. And also the ravens. When you said they're talking, right now I'm in the season of being visited by owls. And 2 owls flew at me this morning when I was coming down my stairs. And so I've been Googling what do they mean? And they are speaking to me. They are giving me messages. So when you did the raven poem, I completely bore witness about, yes, things do speak if you have ears to hear, and will allow that to happen. So I just want to say thank you. I'm really enjoying your poems and my invitation from Barbara Heffel to be here today. I'm grateful I could. And I would like to say I am grateful for everyone's presence and that you've been in my life this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. Anybody else?
Okay,
Okay.
last poem. My father was a salesman. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a guy, the Scots have a wonderful term for it, a man with no hands. He couldn't fix anything.
That's me. That's me.
My mother was the one with the hands. She could fix things. She could do stuff. Not my dad. So I'll just end with this. It's called The Hammock. Oh, and my father would talk about, where are you going today, honey? Well, I'm going to be on the road. Meant he was going to sell stuff. The hammock. How did we ever get a hammock? Possibly it was to please my mother, but more likely a feeling came over my father out in the country where he sold people things they really didn't want. In their faces, he saw their ambivalence about whether they distrusted him or themselves. But on the way back from the road, as he called selling, for a short time, all around him in the canopies of trees that bordered streams, he saw an unending welcome, or in the lettuce fields of black dirt, an invitation to stay and just look, or sit forever beneath the big cow herds of clouds over Alamuchi and Succasunna, towns whose strange and unlikely names made him think of the soul. And yet, soul was never a word that crossed my father's lips. It didn't tie in with anything, unlike the hammock he bought in Dover at the Army Navy store, the kind you hang between posts or trees. But we had no trees growing close together. My father hadn't thought of where the second anchor could be. Another tree, a post, the past. What could he connect to? He left the hammock in the grass to be flecked with raindrops and the footprints of birds. My mother, too, was silent about the soul. Best to leave that hidden, like the oriole's nest we knew must be there, but had never seen. For weeks, the hammock lay in the grass. One evening, I sat down on the canvas and rolled side to side as if I were the hammock. The colored clouds and all that blue moved like a lady's paper fan, faster and faster. I got dizzy watching how easy it was for one thing to become another thing. My mother laughed. We picked up the hammock, brushed off the grass, and carried it to the porch. From chains hooked to the rafters, she hung it. My mother had a plan. She'd already painted the porch ceiling blue. She got in and settled upon the current of that late August night. Where are you going? I asked. Oh, you tell me, she said, more tired than interested. Dover High School. No, not there, please. Because soon that's where she would be all day, teaching the sophomore girls. Silly, she murmured, then was soon asleep. Out the hammock went as I pushed. Then it brought her back, out and back. out to the future which would not be kind to her, then back where the failing light changed the shape of her nose, her hair that in the dark looked darker, her lips, her head slipped to the side towards the night. I was a child in the sway of the music of the hammock, the swung music of breath and creaking rope, the high hum of the chains, the drum thump of canvas against my hands, and the swish of her soul as I pushed my mother away and received her back into my hands again, and again pushed her away, as I do now.
Ooh. Wow. Someone just got thrown out of the hammock. That was a good one. Good ending line. Yeah. Really nice. So we're just about the end. Anybody final comments, questions? I did put in the chat, we do have a weekly program, runs from October to June. This is year 4. If you want to be on the mailing list, we only use it for poetry. We don't use it for anything else. I put my email in the chat. You can send me an email and say, add me to the list, and then you get a email. Probably the email will be tomorrow. I mean, we're not doing Thanksgiving week, so the next one is the 26th. So, and you get an invite, you get the prior recording, things like that. So if you're interested, send me an email. It's my email's in the chat. And Larry, good to see you. Rolly, thank you again. I've gone back to this book 2 or 3 times. I'm literally going to be raven hunting now when I go outside because I think there's some message. I do have one question. Did Phineas and the Ravens ever talk, or were they on separate wavelengths? I know, a little humor, right?
You'll have to ask Phineas. I don't know.
Yeah, Phineas. Yeah, well, I think Phineas is probably sending me a message right now because he's in charge of the household. Yeah. Let's see here. Wait, someone put something in chat. Beautiful. Thank you from Michael Keegan. Wonderful reading, Rolly. So good to hear these poems out loud. Janine Laverty, I just get here for 2 poems. The last one was spectacular. Ivana, great, loved it. Kathy Haley, wonderful reading. So everyone was really excited to hear your work, Rolly, and I want to thank everyone for coming. And we'll stop the recording, and we're going to sign off for today.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
everyone. Yep, thanks again.